Ruby Coast. And now heading back to elections, I am joined by Edan Howell, who is the head of International Investment Advisory at the Scotiabank Group. Good morning, Edan.
Good morning, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I wanted to ask you, given our election on Monday, have you seen any reaction in the Canadian markets or international markets to first the fact that we've elected a majority government for the first time in a while and can expect a period of more stability at our federal government level?
Well, the fact is that's actually not what we've seen, Joel, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Let's take a look at what we have seen ever since the markets opened up on Tuesday. So we've had Tuesday and Wednesday as trading days ever since we knew that we were going to have a majority government. And in that time, the Canadian stock market has fallen 2.29%. So it fell, and that's about 323 points. That's not overly dramatic. Those kinds of falls we've seen before, so that it's not precipitous or anything like that. It went from 14,100 down to just about 13,611. So what I would say is we have seen during the same period commodity prices come down at about the same levels, and that looks like the bigger story of what's going on. If you look at the Canadian dollar, we've also seen it come down a little bit, and we can probably explain that by looking at what's going on in the commodity markets as well. We have seen the bond markets uptick just slightly. So I think we can say that the bond markets may be telling us that they regard Canada as being a little bit less risky than it was a few days before, but really the changes in bond yields that way are very small. So we're not seeing dramatic pictures, and I think that that's probably a good sign for us. What it's telling us is that the political issues that go on inside Canada, which really is a fairly small pond, are less important than the broad global themes that are going on. And what we're seeing is that Canada is very much connected into those broad global themes. We are a commodity exporter, and so if commodity prices start to come down, we can assume that our companies are going to be receiving a little bit less revenue from selling those commodities, and that impacts the prices of stocks. So, again, I'm not sure that we're seeing the markets reacting to the political situation. I think the markets are telling us that Canada is healthy enough and that our political issues are, on the global scale, small enough that this is really business as usual. We had a certain election. We didn't have any, there were no claims of any problems. It was quick. It was decisive. That's what the market seemed to expect from Canada. And so they've just looked to the broader themes that we're involved in rather than sort of the actual structure of the House of Commons.
And I think that's not surprising to hear that the broader themes are carrying the day. There was, if you listen to certain programming out there, this suggestion that by electing the NDP as an official opposition, or potentially, given the way the polls were going, as a governing coalition partner, that the theme was that may spook the markets incredibly, that the NDP were so extreme. You're obviously not seeing any evidence that having the NDP as an official opposition has affected our markets one way or the other.
And I think that's right. I think, again, inside what I'll call the chattering classes inside Canada, clearly for political reasons, this has been an important election. And we're seeing themes that are very interesting and that suggest a possibly different future. But in terms of how that all adds up to how the Canadian economy is performing, the markets are not terribly fussed by it. Again, on a global scale, the political spectrum is quite limited in Canada. Our right is not very right. Our left is not very left. I think there's a strong sense that our political leaders are fine people, competent people, and that it would be very difficult to drive a country like Canada into the ground. And I think that's a positive thing for all of us. So no, I don't think that the markets are spooked by an NDP opposition. And in a lot of ways, it may be possible that this, crystallizes some debate, and it may even moderate the Conservative Party a little bit. So it may actually be pulling our policies and our basic direction more into the center. In that, if the Conservatives need to be just right of the NDP or just right of whichever opponent they have, then this may be pulling people into the center. So we'll see what happens. But again, the markets are telling us that Canada is sound, and that this election doesn't, at least in my view, doesn't give us anything to worry about.
What do you see for the medium-term future? Obviously, things seem fairly stable right now, as you say. Do you foresee any major movement in the Canadian dollar going forward? Obviously, commodities are what's driving that right now, and I think will continue to drive it. But do you see any movement coming up in the medium-term future?
Not really. The Canadian dollar has appreciated quite a bit against the U.S. dollar. I mean, it's difficult to say whether the extent to which the Canadian dollar has appreciated versus the U.S. dollar depreciating. So we've certainly seen weakness in the U.S. dollar, and that probably flows from their weakened fiscal position. So the fact that the Canadian dollar has appreciated against the U.S. dollar in the last little while, we're not certain that it's going to appreciate all that much more, and it's probably going, again, to be driven by what happens in the commodity markets. And what we're seeing in the commodity markets is a bit of a pullback, but that's been expected. And it's really not anything dramatic. It's just coming back from levels that did seem a little bit hot. So I would say that the Canadian dollar will probably trade in a fairly small range over the medium term.
Thank you so much, Edan, for joining us. Again, that was Edan Howell, who is the head of International Investment Advisory at the Scotiabank Group. Thank you so much for being here this morning, Edan.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You're very welcome.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye now.